Hey guys, Thomas Jr. here, aka Mustached. I'm here to review the movie Serenity. So after watching this movie, I decided to, yes, watch a few reviews afterwards, so if my view seems skewed in any way, I do apologize in advance. So, anyways, this movie will also have spoilers if you have not seen it. So with that being said, let's begin. This movie starts off on a boat with two men who are like sleeping, and we follow this man named Duke and Dale. Dale played by Matthew McConaughey, who freaks out on these other two rich guys, saying that he wants to capture this tuna, which he later refers to as justice. So, the two of them, that being Duke and Dale, drop the ball in catching this fish. And we randomly cut to this business guy who tries to run up into the water for some bizarre reason at the point in time, but nonetheless, it cuts away. So already this movie starts off with something kind of bizarre happening. So, anyways, we continue on as Dale gets his moves on with this lady who he considers himself a hooker for. And he wants money so that he can essentially go on about continuing on and so forth. So he talks to this guy at the bar, and he, again, as I mentioned, he refers to the fish as justice. So he goes to drink and smoke and thinks about his son, Patrick. It is here where we see that there's some sort of bizarre connection that is made pretty obvious at this point what is going on. But I will save that for when it is placed in a more direct context as to what's going on. So we once again see that businessman moving on the bus, but he doesn't quite make the arrival. So Duke and Dale settle in for the next day. And Dale mentions Duke's wife or dead wife, I should specify, to essentially drive him off and make him not want to work there anymore, and it works. So he starts to head into the bartender, and he's writing these notes, and the bartenders talk to him, and we're introduced to, I believe the actress's name is Anne Hathaway, I think that's right, but she plays a woman named Karen, I believe that's her name in the movie. And she found him and wants to talk, and says that his real name is apparently John, but for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to keep calling him Dale. So she mentions that she's in this relationship with this guy named Frank, who's this rich, snobby guy that abuses her. And that Patrick is their son, and that she will offer $10 million if he will kill Frank by getting him to the water and then essentially getting him drunk and then killing him. So he tells her all this, and then he's like, nah, I'm good. And the businessman we see once again runs up and stops and manages to miss our main character, Dale. We cut to him then talking to the lady who he is having sex with for money, and then does that again, and says that he wants to take a swim. So he proceeds to take off all of his clothes and jump into the water, and thus he hears his son's voice as he jumps in and even sees him visually, but then suddenly and abruptly wakes up on land, and he calls it to his son. We cut back to the suit guy. We cut back to Frank, I should say. What was her name? Kendra? Oh, yeah, Karen, sorry. So she's dealing with that currently. So it turns out that Frank was about to get it on with his wife, but it cuts away again. And he gets in more, we cut back to, by the way, Dale, who's getting more gear from this woman, shop owner. And we learn about this, and we see this Fontaine card. And meet up with Frank once more, who meets up with Dale. So Frank shows a little gun to show that he means business in the terms of you better pay attention or you'll probably get killed. So we see that the businessman tries again, but fails once more to gain access to seeing Dale. So he does some more business with the market guy. And then Dale has some more sex on the side with his sex gal. Then it cuts to Duke talking to Dale, and Duke wants him to initially take the offer, but later on he's like, no. But because Dale is insisting that that they don't do this at first. So we see that Karen is now talking to him about their son. And he finds it peculiar that this bird is like following them in a pattern that doesn't seem to be of the norm. So the three of them, that being Dale, Frank, and Karen, go out to the boat. And he starts to talk about his son. And how his son fishes online, specifically. So he gets hooked up to all this gear, and he manages to pull in a shark with the help of Dale there. So the wife offers to double down on this essential offer of the whole kill. It mentions how she knows about this whole justice thing as well. And starts to talk about how it was his son's plan to do all of this. So, Duke and Dale start to talk again. And Dale starts to talk about how he went to war and how he came back and how he was a different man. So Duke wants to know at this point if Dale is still in, and he's still hearing his son's voice at various points in this time as well. But Karen visits him afterwards, late at the night at the boat, and starts to kiss him excessively. So he starts to accept the offer, and then sees the scars, and then proceeds to have sex with his wife. So, after the sex, the businessman finally gets to talk to him, and we learn that his name is Reed. So Reed starts to regale that he wants to sell Dale this fish finder. And he then goes on to mention how he already knows that Dale is getting ready to kill somebody. So Dale threatens him. Thus, here we go. Spoiler alert, at this point in time, Reed mentions that they are inside a video game. And thus, from here on out, we learn that the entire island is a part of this game. And that the sun made this world to play these games. And that this character himself is apparently the rules as they currently exist. And that he, Dale, exists in this program. We then cut to him suddenly in bed, and he's looking at this 14 card. And he starts to roll out all these maps, and sees that the only location in the entire area is indeed this island. So he starts to call out to Patrick, trying to figure out what's going on. And then it cuts to him where this woman is offering him more gear, and he's kind of just like, yeah. He starts to ask this woman, or I should say NPC at this point, where they currently are. And she keeps trying to go back to her line of thinking of like, oh, you just need to catch that fish. And even the radio, if you hear the radio from the beginning and kind of put that together, that it's always just talking about catching the fish as well. So, he talks to this other guy, the bartender, I think, that he talked to earlier, and he asks how long he's been there, and the bartender insists that they felt like they have been there forever, which would make sense in the form of a video game. We cut to the mom looking at this blood scene in how Frank was stabbed. So apparently Duke sent out a bunch of men to attack Frank. So just so that he would not appear at the docks, so that things could go back to normal and that Dale can go back to his little thing. But he's already freaking out. So he goes to the bartender saying that no one really knows what's going on. And then he starts to drive off. So Karen kind of starts to turn on Frank as this ploy to get him out on the boat. And Dale starts to drink on this little shoreline. And then Reed, the rules, catches up to Dale. And Reed, the rules, starts to ask about the creator. It starts to do this weird thing where he starts to vanish and then reappear as the, I think it is implying that the rules are being deleted. So Dale rushes back as, Duke makes his way outside and starts to say something or other. And he proceeds, Dale and Karen proceed to get out Frank onto this boat. But the door opens and there's like this random younger guy that suddenly is in the film. He's like, I'm here to give you luck. So, the fish justice arrives on the scene, and Frank insists that they give him the rod to catch on. So he is given everything and then is pulled down immediately. And as soon as this happens, we see the son, Patrick, who, by the way, throughout the film we've seen a few cuts of him writing code, or him trying to break the current video game that he is playing, to reach into his tackle box, grab a knife, and then proceed to kill the real Frank. So, we get a TV update saying that Patrick got arrested, and that his father, that being Dale, was killed in action during the war that he said he got back home from in the video game world. So we see him talking to his wife, who suddenly fades after their interaction. And he answers this phone call where, we're looking back at Dale, who's still in this video game, and he starts to hear his son's voice, and the son says that he is going to reprogram the world so that him and his father can reconnect. So Dale starts to see this world being reprogrammed and everything around him being reorganized. Thus, he's able to see his son, a digital version of him at the very most, run up to his father at the dock, and then they reunite, and that is the movie Serenity. Okay. So, again, after seeing the two reviews, or the few reviews that I have seen, there is a lot of implication that the writing is bad. And here's the thing, is that at first I was like, yeah, that does kind of fit, but then I thought about it from the perspective of, well, if the kid had wrote this so-called game, then yeah, the writing would be a little bit not as good as, say, if a professional writer had written it, or someone older who has spent more time writing. So I do think that the writing does fit for what's going on, but I still think that it's not quite there either. I think it's good, it's just not, I think it's okay, it's just not good. Which I think is one step below, by the way. And I think that there could have been more things happening in the background, particularly towards the beginning of the film, that kind of could have implied that this was a game all along, without, also being a little bit more subtle about it. And here's the thing, right, is that they directly say that this is a game, and from the reviews I've heard is that people are like, oh, you shouldn't spell things out for us. Well, here's the thing, is that it was a few videos ago where I said, I created the phrase, show us what we need to see, tell us what we need to hear. And in the case of this movie, because there was, to me at least, from what I was looking at, there was not enough subtlety surrounding the beginning part of the movie to indicate that this was a game. So to me, when they spelt it out that it was indeed a video game, I was like, that was like the first time where I was like, okay, no, this is actually a video game. So if they had did a better job being subtle about it, then I could see them removing the whole direct, like, oh, we need to tell you this is a whole video game. However, that line to me just never felt like it was crossed. It never felt like any part of the beginning of the movie implied that was a game, even though people claimed that they knew that it was going to happen somehow. Though they never explain how they put it together, just that they put it together, which to me smells very suspicious. I think there's some reviewers looking at other reviewers, seeing what they say, and then repeating it and regurgitating it. It was like, I heard two or three reviewers say it. Like, oh, I caught what was going on in like 10% of the whole movie, and 3 different reviewers said that. I'd smell suspicious fuckery afoot if there ever was one. So yeah, I'm not buying it. I'm gonna always be honest with you guys. I'm always gonna say what I actually think, what I actually feel. I'm always gonna be honest with you guys. So I think that there wasn't enough subtlety to implicate that this was indeed a video game. There just wasn't enough there to imply that. Yeah. So this movie does feel like it is 2 separate movies. That being like Catch the Fish, and then it's like this is gonna be a fishing movie up until a certain point, up until the wife arrives. The wife arrives, and then later on in the movie they learn about, or he learns specifically, that it is indeed a video game. So it almost feels like it's cut into 3 different segments, which I guess kind of makes sense, since like the poster itself seems to be implied to be in 3 parts: him, her, and the code in between. So good poster work, I suppose. If that's what they were going for, but I can't say for 100% certainty. So it was okay. I do feel like the beginning of the movie is where it struggled the most to make sense of what this movie was trying to be, and then once they lay out that this is a video game, I think that is when the context of everything kind of starts to lay out, and things actually start to make sense, even though everyone else says like, oh, this movie makes no sense. You know, it kind of, to me, it actually is the reverse of everything. The beginning actually is the part that makes the least sense, and then once the video game concept reveals itself is when things start to make sense. You know, it's all about these NPCs trying to keep order. They're trying to follow what they know to be the code. Except with the exception of the main character, the character we are following, Dale or John, or whatever name he goes by. And that's the thing, is like, if that was the case, and if they really wanted to hit it home that this was a game, I think they should have done like some sort of effect, or do something with the acting, which would imply a glitch or something. Not with the other characters, because that kind of clearly does kind of happen at one point, but I think it would have been more obvious, like, hit it without being, again, that sort of implication without actually specifying. And again, since it never happens, them spelling it out kind of needed to happen, I think. So I'm going to give this movie a 5 out of 10. I feel like it's halfway there to being a good movie, but there was just... getting to that point was where I felt like this movie struggled the most, and putting it together to make it all fit is where this movie struggled the most. But I think the rest of it does work itself out. And this is a movie that kind of implies that there might have been a not so perfect happy ending, but I don't know. Anyways, that is my review of the movie Serenity, and if you enjoyed this movie, then please feel free to please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out that link in the description. I'll head you over to my Patreon page, and any donations are greatly appreciated. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.